Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, where we discuss the latest DevOps news, AWS announcements, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's November 5th, 2025. I'm your host, Eric Osterman, and it's my birthday, by the way. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. Cloud Posse sells AWS reference architectures that get you production ready in just 2 weeks. So if you're curious to learn more, go to cloudposse.com. So how can you maximize today's session? Well, first of all, format is very informal. You can engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools or modules like Atmos, this is a great place to ask. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. Join us live by going to cloudposse.com/officehours, where you can register and get an invitation to our weekly meeting. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, share it with share it with your team. Our team's got access. You can head over to youtube.com/cloudposse, where you'll find a link to the recording in just a few hours. So here's what caught my attention this week. I was talking with an AWS account manager and trying to understand which organizations are eligible to consolidate their organizational billing. Obviously, you can have consolidated billing for an organization, but generally Amazon doesn't allow you to consolidate the billing across multiple AWS organizations, yet I've seen them do it for enterprises. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. I didn't get to the bottom of it, so if anybody can share more information, if they have insights on that, I'd like to know. But what I did learn is AWS announced recently, back about a month ago, that you can now at least have a unified view of your cloud spend across multiple AWS organizations. But this is not a billing construct. This is just like a dash, giving you visibility in the dashboards. Anyone know more about consolidated billing across organizations on AWS? Nope. All right. Next one was something that caught my attention on the Kubernetes blog. It caught my attention for a couple reasons. One is I didn't realize that the Karpenter cluster autoscaler for Kubernetes was actually just for Kubernetes. I thought it was actually just for AWS EKS flavor. But it turns out that Karpenter is building or has some level of support for the other clouds. Now, this product that I'm talking about here called Headlamp is interesting. One of the problems when you use Karpenter is, well, on the one hand, it's really nice. So taking a step back, if you're not familiar with Karpenter is for Kubernetes, Karpenter is a modern cluster autoscaler built from the ground up to support configuring all the scaling policies as just custom resources. You can configure all your node pools just with a custom resource, the scaling characteristics. You can integrate it with Kata if you want to have other custom scaling mechanisms and so forth. The problem that we've encountered is when you, for example, run GitHub's Actions runner controller on Kubernetes with Karpenter as your autoscaler. Now you have two problems. One is as you're scaling out your GitHub Action runners, you also have to make sure that your Kubernetes cluster autoscaler is appropriately configured to scale out as well. And there are tuning parameters you got to tune with GitHub Actions runner controller. There are tuning parameters you have to tune with Karpenter, and trying to do both at the same time is hard. Usually you pick one thing to optimize at a time. Well, Headlamp is a dashboard that helps you visualize what's going on inside of Karpenter so you can understand what its reasoning is for auto scaling. Any insights on Headlamp? Venkat, do you do a lot of custom tuning of Karpenter?
No.
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 Just curious. So yeah, actually, this is one of the reasons why we've stopped deploying Actions Runner Controller on Kubernetes, just because it was so much grief trying to get the auto scaling parameters all fully in sync, and we just use runs on .com now instead.
Literally just hopped on like 30 seconds ago, so I probably missed part of this. But if you're having issues with Karpenter by chance, I know there's some third-party autoscalers. Um, one from EOTL, that is supposed to be cloud agnostic, and there's one I think from DevZero that they've been focusing in on that also runs. It has its own benefits. I don't recall all the exact nuances. And then
Huh.
on top of that, there's like another company that's doing some stuff around you run your autoscaler, one of those options that I just mentioned, including Karpenter, but they don't care about that. They just resize your workloads vertically or horizontally. So they deal with the autoscaling at the pod level, but you still use your traditional autoscaler. So
Interesting.
that's another one that I haven't that thing that I just mentioned. It's called Thoros. They're they're not open source, unfortunately. I'm sure there will be an open source version sooner than later. But they're basically focused in on just like right sizing I think it's Thoros AI. First link. What is Thoros? Sorry, first non-sponsored link.
Yeah. Interesting.
Um, so this thing's pretty cool. I got to see a demo of it. They were doing an event in SoCal, and this you just keep using your autoscaler as you like, but they focus it on right sizing the workloads. I have not kicked the tires on this yet, but I think this would be another thing to consider in terms of kind of like the overhead you may deal with when you're trying to get stuff right. I believe this handles it more intelligently. I believe there is a model being deployed,
Hmm.
and I think it runs in your cluster. I don't know what the costs
Oh,
are for the
cool.
model, or how they're doing it, but it doesn't send data back to them. They're doing it off historical, so you run it for like a week,
Yeah,
and then
you wait
yeah,
for their service to be offline and you don't scale just because they were trying to extract some SaaS money. So that
yeah,
makes
I believe it's all self-hosted. So yeah, I'm
that's
not sure
really cool.
exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. What there was one other autoscaler you mentioned.
Dev Zero.
Yeah, what's that one?
Yeah, I don't know if they actually updated their website yet. They built an autoscaler, and it looks like they may have updated their website. First non-sponsored link.
Wait,
They were the company that was doing
sponsored
development environment.
Kata Autos. Okay, so their company. Interesting. I think we
I didn't
what
know
Kata do?
Was a
Oh,
thing. That's new to me. Yeah, I believe DevZero did some type of business pivot. They had built this internally, is my understanding, and they realized, hey, this is a model in itself, and they're getting
but, who did the pivot you said?
DevZero. So they used to do cloud development environments like Codespaces or like Gitpod, and
Okay.
they built this for themselves. They had built a bunch of the underlying infra to support that cloud development environment, and I think they might still be doing both, or they might just be focused on this new offering. But their CTO, I think, doing a bunch of like LinkedIn influencing, and they've been heavily promoting this. So I think they might still be doing both, but I know this is like the underlying tech that they're using for their Gitpod like environments.
Hmm. Interesting. Who was the company? Was it Gitpod? Who said that they're throwing in the towel? Screw this. We're not deploying dev environments on Kubernetes anymore. It's impossible.
I think that sounds pretty accurate. Yeah.
Wait,
I think
is Dev Zero the company behind Gitpod?
no, they built their whole tool chain.
Similar. Okay, got it, got it. Yeah, makes
They're actually using micro VMs, and I think for their Kubernetes auto scaling, they're using micro VMs as well. So from the brief discussions they've had with them, they're basically just leveraging micro VMs, so they can basically scale you up very quickly and scale you down, and they can support that on AWS as well as bare metal. So I think they've got all the hyperscalers covered.
Yeah.
And then I think they do like Proxmox if you have on-prem. I think they've got a driver for that. And they can basically just run micro VM Kubernetes workers for you, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm. So this seems like it's all top of mind for you. What have you been working on?
Perhaps a longer discussion than the scope of this call.
Okay. Cool. All right, let's see. All right. Next announcement was a link dropped in the Terraform channel. I also think I saw something on Reddit as well. So a comment, and we actually had a blog post about something kind of similar or tangentially related recently at docs.cloudposse.com, where we talk about why we recommended using managed node groups over Fargate for EKS add-ons, and we talk about like the catch-22 problem when you're provisioning Kubernetes clusters with Terraform, and that not everything is available at plan time, and this usually leads to two-phase applies when you try and stand up Kubernetes clusters. And we were able to work around this using managed node groups, but we could never get that quite working with Fargate managed node pools. So what this provider does is help you mitigate that without hacks shelling out to curl or things on the command line or other shell scripts using null resources. This is a native provider that bypass some of the typical best practices of providers so that it can get you a valid certificate that lets you authenticate with your Kubernetes cluster. At least that's my quick skimming of how it works. There's a longer post in the Terraform channel where the author posts this, and there's some more write-up here on how it works. So if automating Kubernetes clusters with Terraform and having two-phase applies is something you've encountered, then this is probably something to check out, this Terraform provider. All right, any questions on this one? All right. So Mohammed shared this a couple weeks ago, and I missed it in the Slack channel. It's called Rain, a play on words, since when you have a CloudFormation, the byproduct is often rain. And it's a new CLI from AWS to make managing and deploying CloudFormation templates a lot nicer. It has, modern CLI interface, visual feedback with a custom spinner, and supports a better composition of your CloudFormation templates, including what I thought was nice was the use of YAML explicit tags. This is something that we use in Atmos to make functions basically accessible within YAML. So I haven't seen this type of notation with the double colon before. It makes total sense. I just have never seen that used together with explicit tags, which is clear with the exclamation mark here. But what I like about it is I hadn't seen too many projects, too many CLI tools using this convention. And we often have to explain to users, this is not templating. This is native YAML. We've just implemented this extension. And they are now leveraging that as well here. I also think it's interesting. The project is written in Go. And it looks like, well, I haven't taken a closer look how much is internal versus public, but it might be something we can just directly link to in Atmos and add a nice interface for deploying CloudFormation templates if we don't want to just shell out to the CLI itself. So pretty cool. Any thoughts on this? Has anybody seen Rain before or kicked the tires on it already? Let's see. All right. So I thought I would share another demo of Atmos Auth. Not everyone saw the original demo. Plus, we've just had a ton of improvements to Atmos Auth. And I wanted to show you what that looks like. So I'll share my screen, my other screen here, and kind of show what that's like. Well, quick, before I go into that, why don't I share this window one more time? So if you're not familiar with Atmos Auth is something we've added to Atmos. Atmos is the CLI tool we maintain here at Cloud Posse that we use to automate the deliverable of all the things that we provide through our services. We provide, reference architectures for AWS that make it easy for customers to stand up their infrastructure from the ground up within a consistent framework. One of the things that we had pushed off for far too long is how users manage their identities when they're working with the cloud provider. If you are familiar with running like the AWS SSO tool on the command line, that's how you kind of manage your identity there. But which identity do you need when you need to apply certain Terraform code? And what if different team members use different identities? And what if the identity that it's almost always the case when you're using GitHub Actions or like a CI environment, well, that's going to be a different identity. And everybody solves this ultimately if you're using Terraform in it or deploying infrastructure with any sort of automation, but everybody solves it a different way with a hodgepodge of tools that are strung together. We've leveraged a lot of those over the years, going back to AWS Vault, which was the OG of these tools that helped you manage your AWS IAM users when that was still the way to do things with MFA. But then everything's moved on since then. We're all using various versions of single sign-on or SAML to authenticate with AWS. There's a rich ecosystem of tools that provide this. Another OG there is SAML to AWS, but there are a lot of other little tools that are written out there to manage this one aspect. The Unix philosophy has always been, small purpose-built tools, and I get it. I grew up with that. But at some point, it just becomes madness as you are trying to combine all those little tools together. And if you need absolute flexibility to do that in some way, and you love Bash or whatever your scripting du jour is, have at it. What we're trying to do is standardize how these operations are performed so that it's verifiably done the same way, whether you're on Linux, Windows, on Mac OS, in CI, and not try and string together all of these different tools. Because there's one thing I've noticed is, as cool as they are, all these little tools, the maintainers, they move on to other projects. The company isn't sponsoring that thing. It's no longer a problem for them or whatever happens. And the most recent example of this was Leap, which we absolutely loved and used for a very long time. Leap, though, the company behind it wasn't able to create a sustainable business about it. So then that project gets abandoned. Where does that leave us? That leaves us trying to find another solution to do this. And this is happening over and over again. So Atmos Auth solves this once and for all in the tool that we use and maintain and use every single day with every single one of our deliveries. So we never have to deal with this problem again. And every time we run into yet another issue with something like this, we can just fix it since we have it and it's all open source. So Atmos Auth, I'm going to show you a demo here, has a bunch of subcommands that kind of do obvious things. Login, so log into your identity, whether that's SAML, SSO, and other identities are coming. We support GitHub OIDC, but there's a bug with it. There's a PR coming soon for that, or it's open but not merged yet. Atmos Auth Env sets up your local shell environment so you can use that identity securely. Atmos Auth Exec lets you run a command with a given identity. Atmos Who Am I shows you your current identity, and then other commands like Atmos Auth Shell, which lets you start a interactive shell, login shell, with a given identity. So let me show you what all that looks like. So it's a little bit less opaque. So here we go. Wait, let me share my full screen here. So I don't do that thing where nobody knows what I'm talking about. All right, you guys see a terminal window? Oh, this is not refreshing. There we go. You guys, let me make this bigger. You see my terminal window in for live main?
Yeah, we see it.
All right, perfect. So Atmos Auth. So one of the first things that you might want to do with Atmos Auth is understand what your identities are. So here you can see a breakdown of all the identities that we have available in our architecture, fine-grained roles for different accounts, and the associated roles that would get assumed for each one of those. We can see the hierarchy here. We see that we also support two different providers. We support a SAML provider and a CP Live SSO provider via AWS Identity Center. And we understand that this is the sign-in URL for this CP Live and SAML, and this is the one for SSO. Under SAML, you see we have no identities configured. So right now in this demo, I'm not going to show you anything using SAML. But we do have AWS SSO configured, and then we have the role chaining set up here so we can assume these different roles that go through. Ultimately, this principle here of the manager's team access. And we can see that because it's nested under here. The other thing we'll notice is that we're not signed into anything because there's, well, you're going to see in a moment, no visual indicator. So let's start performing some operations. I'm going to run Atmos Auth login. And here are those identities that I can select between. Now, if there's one identity I always use, I can I can pass that via an argument on the command line, or I can set an environment variable. So I'm going to log into our dev account. Now, I already had an active SSO session, so that's why it didn't prompt me here to log into AWS SSO. But, well, let's say that I should do a better demo and log out first of everything. So I've logged out now of everything, and I'm going to run like AWS S3 LS, and I get a permissions error. It doesn't work. So Atmos Auth, login. I'm going to log into Flat Dev. Going back to the terminal window, since that went a little bit quick there. Here you can see that it's waiting now for me to complete the authentication. If the window hadn't popped up, I could just load this URL, but it did, and now it's waiting for authentication. I go over here, verify that code matches, click allow, bam, I'm in, I'm authenticated. Now I can reuse that session to run all my other commands. Atmos Auth, who am I? And let's say I wanted to be in Sandbox. It verifies that I can access that and so forth. So now Atmos Auth list. Here you can see the accounts where I have an active session that are authenticated and haven't expired. And I'm signed in through this manager's team access. All right, let's start running some commands. So one of the things we can do is Atmos Auth exec. I have this stupid autocomplete thing here, so I have to do this little annoying thing to get a dash that it doesn't expand. Okay, there. So this here now lets me specify any command to run under a given identity. So I'm going to run Atmos AWS S3 LS, hit enter. All right, which identity do I want to use? I want to look in our Sandbox account. All right, cool. Here are all the buckets in our Sandbox. Here's all the buckets in our staging account. Or if I wanted to now start an interactive shell, I can do that as well. Dropping into the dev account lets me know I'm in that shell, AWS S3 LS. And I have access to the dev account and can list the buckets that exist within there. When I exit that shell and rerun like AWS S3 LS, it doesn't work because I don't have access to it. So it's a nice thing from a security perspective, how that all works. And what you can also do is if you don't want to start subshells and you want to have like more native integration within your shell, you can do something like this where you run eval Atmos Auth env. And that will produce a shell environment. And I can say that I want to be in the dev account. Now I can type export. And ordinarily, you wouldn't want to run this command because secrets would be leaked, but we're not using any secrets in the environment here. We're pointing to the SDK environment variables where these credentials can be found. Some interesting things are happening here. If you're used to using AWS tools, they typically always use the tilde.aws folder. We're not using that. First, we're respecting XDG paths. So whatever you've set up your shell environment variables for XDG, it will honor those. We're also putting them under the Atmos namespace and under namespace for each provider. And that's nice because when you have your config set up to use these things, you couldn't accidentally use the wrong provider and so forth. And then we set the AWS profile, so all commands are executed with a given permissions context that's been authenticated, and the credentials are stored in this file. Now that file I can't show you, sorry. So what can I do now? Now I can run AWS S3 LS, and there I see everything in the dev account. Or I can rerun that command, and I can change my context to sandbox and run this, and bam, there's everything in the sandbox account. Now this, I've shown you how you can use Atmos Auth regardless of if you use the Atmos framework for everything else Atmos can do, which is a heck of a lot. So that brings me then to some other announcements that we have. If I go to Atmos, or if I go back to actually my Arc browser, one of the things we added was support for workflows. So workflows, when you have a workflow, now each step in that workflow can specify the identity to use. So if you have a process that needs to stand up in an environment, you need different roles to perform different operations in different accounts with different identities, that's handled out of the box. And we did the same thing for custom commands. Custom commands are similar to workflows, but what custom commands are, they expose a new command in the Atmos CLI with that name. So here we're exposing a new command called deploy, and then it performs these steps. And now with you can specify a global identity that all those steps would use when they perform. Or you can override that by passing the command line argument here. So that was a mouthful. Any questions on Atmos Auth? It works also with stacks and Terraform plan, Terraform apply, out of the box as well. What we can do is, all right, let's do this. AWS, no, Atmos Terraform plan, VPC, stack, gonna tab complete here. I'm gonna go to plat UE2 sandbox. And that's just gonna work because it has the identity configured with that component in that stack, so it knows exactly which identity it needs to run this Terraform operation. I, as an end user, as a developer, don't need to know anything about which identities to use because if everything is configured correctly, it just works. And that's what we have. So here we see it would want to destroy this VPC in this account. Any questions on this? Any other demos you'd like to see on Atmos Auth? All right. Let's see. I think that pretty much covered all my announcements today. Yeah, one small announcement, and I demoed it already, was now when you tab complete within Atmos on a given stack for a given component, it only shows the stacks that have that component. Previously, we just showed you all available stacks, which was helpful, but not as helpful as showing you exactly the stacks where you can actually apply it and not get an error. So that's the improvement there to tab completion. Any other announcements? Let's check the Zoom chat. Q&A. Any questions we can get answered on the call today?
I had a question around AWS backup. Anyone here using it?
Yeah, I mean, we deployed standard in all of our engagements. Some new improvements I don't believe we've taken advantage of yet, but should be coming out soon, is setting up AWS organizational policies for AWS backup so that you can set it and forget it and basically auto backup things based on certain tags across the organization.
You can do that across the org, you're saying with
It's
the
a new
default?
feature. Yeah, they just came out with it.
Okay, got it. Cool. Yeah, I only learned about it recently, a few weeks ago. We've been doing I guess what I'd call the older approach of a separate root organization, and then dumping stuff from one root org to another root org, and having only like a very limited number of people who have access to those backups. It's very like legacy approach given AWS backup functionality and what exists today. And so I was not aware of the stuff that you can do with AWS backup. I just kind of thought it was I just overlooked it. Long story short, I learned about it recently and realized, hey, we don't need the separate root org anymore. If anything, this is kind of better because I could keep all the data within an account. And so, basically, I've just been looking at deploying it and looking at using the logically air-gapped version as well. That looked pretty solid. This way, you don't actually lose the data till like 90 days after, or whatever that retention policy is.
Yeah, and they also have, I don't know if that's the same thing, but like backup vaults, which are, protect you against any sort of ransomware attacks where you can't manipulate, delete, or alter the data.
Yeah, I think they called it like logically air gapped. Maybe there's two words for it, but I think it was once you set it, they keep warning you. It goes into effect in 3 days, and you cannot delete it till all your backups are gone. And so they're just like really warning you. And I guess even when you delete the account, you still get billed for 90 days. So,
Exactly, right? Yeah.
so that's
they just set
exactly
a 7-year retention policy.
and that's exactly the kind of protection we were looking for, anyways, is to cover all those edge cases. So yeah, I've been looking at it recently, and was just curious on if anyone else is using it, if they are still doing the legacy traditional approach with the separate root org, or if they've just gone all in on backup, like a single, like that, basically just leveraging AWS backup to solve the problem. It sounds like you folks are just leveraging that, but
yeah, I remember now when you say it. A long time ago, we've had this conversation, probably years ago at this point, and I remember you were doing something like this and taking snapshots to another org just to ensure that it's impossible, basically.
I mean, that was like the best practice years ago, from my understanding. And it looks like about a year or two ago, AWS backup came out. I don't know when they added S3 in there. But I'm like, oh, this kind of replaces that need. I went through a lot of effort to get that second root org created. Now I'm like, all right. So now I guess I could have avoided it from what it looks like. But
yeah, for sure. We have a module and a component for both, depending on how you want to implement that. If you're interested in doing it with Terraform.
Oh yeah. I always look to your repos to copy before I create my own. So if you're asking if I'm copying and pasting, I can assure you the answer is yes.
Yeah. So you'll find AWS backup here.
Sergey, I did actually inquire with the AWS support over the weekend, some nuances. I didn't go in too deep on the database stuff, but I believe that actually you don't need the snapshots from within AWS RDS. I think you can actually control everything from AWS backup. One of the things I'm still unable to wrap my head around is the failure situations. If you have another job running at the same time as one backup job, you can apparently run failures. So you have to figure out what those nuances are. And I think AWS RDS does have some nuances like that. So you will need to factor that into your backup plan. Also, if you have encryption and you're doing replication, or actually, if you have encryption at all, I think it ends up doing a full snapshot every time. So if you have EBS volumes or RDS encrypted, I think it doesn't do incremental. You're doing full backup. I think it's just a limitation of the service.
Yeah, understandable. They're probably not able to do the journal type of replay or whatnot.
Also, I read this on the docs. We're not running much RDS where I'm using this, but in the docs, I recall it said if you're using RDS and you have a maintenance window and it overlaps with your backup window, basically it's going to fail. So, yeah, you'll pretty much want to, if you use AWS backup, I think the thing that we're still trying to figure out is how we want to get our notifications and not get alert fatigue from it. But you'll want to probably set up multiple jobs to run multiple times a day and make sure you're getting notified on the failures.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a huge backup, they were recommending to me that I kick off a backup manually and then set up the automation after. This way, it's just incremental.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, I don't have fine-grained advice in terms of adopting it like that. Paul has some more comments in the chat. AWS calls each service's native backup method, such as RDS create snapshot. Encryption semantics for RDS and Aurora and some other services remain the same. There's a distinction between whether AWS backup or a particular service handles encryption or not.
I don't remember the terminology offhand, but there's this distinction. You'll see in the feature. You have to pay very close attention to the feature table for AWS backup by service. But there's a distinction between encryption that's managed by AWS backup or encryption that is managed by the service itself. So for RDS and Aurora, normal KMS encryption applies, and you can have incremental backup subject to the usual conditions, which are not always easy to meet. We've actually got some software that handles, because I deal a lot with cross-region and cross-account, and that handles modifying the retention policies so that you keep the base backup that you need so that you get that incremental benefit. Because if you lose the base backup in a given region and a given account, or given region, then it becomes a full backup and you pay accordingly. So happy to share that.
Also, make sure you test recovery processes.
Indeed. And backup is great because it has a restore. You can schedule restores as well, and you can schedule restore testing. You could use that even to seed. A lot of companies shouldn't do this, but they take production, a copy of production, and restore it to staging every week with the customer data. You could build a more intelligent process with the data, but nevertheless, you could automate that whole thing with AWS backup restore testing and have it do it for you.
Does Paul, if you've used it, does it tell you if a single file doesn't get restored correctly, or is it still up to the end user to kind of validate the integrity of the files? If that makes sense.
You can call for RDS and for Aurora as a snapshot, and it will call a Lambda function that you author if you want to do a validation. So you could do the usual, count how many records and approximate, or do some other kind of check.
Oh, you can actually have AWS backup orchestrate that, or are you saying?
Indeed. Yeah, it will call it for you on your behalf. It will give you the details of the restored database, or folks instantiated, the database instantiated.
Cool. I was not aware of that.
Something like Cloud Map automatically?
Yeah, we'll do it automatically for you. Yeah, and this is optional too. You can just restore it because obviously with the restore, whatever was there is going to be there. But it is very important that this is more to prevent a different kind of user error where you're backing up at the wrong time or some automated process has already done something and then you took a snapshot. So it's a different kind of verification. But yeah, so it's optional and you can write the function and have it call it for you. It eliminates so much bespoke code being written in workflow.
It's breaking up there a little bit, Paul, but I think we got you.
I apologize. I'm outdoors. Yes, sorry.
Cool. Any other? I saw you posted another message above this. Venkat, hey, Jeremy and I and the rest of the team are actively trying to produce more content around things we were working on.
Yeah, I was just replying to Jeremy's question around if we have a blog to discuss the Kate's dev environments.
Oh, gotcha. I missed the question.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was just in response to that. So yeah, if that's something you, Jeremy, whomever is interested in, we could either try to publish something around that if that'd be helpful, or all our code is public. We just don't actively promote it as well as you folks do. So yeah, so let us know. Happy to. It's all pretty much open. We're happy to do a personal demo on that as well, if that's something you folks are kind of trying to roll out on your team.
Got it. Any other questions today we can discuss? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, maybe we wrap up a little bit early. Sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. It'll be at youtube.com/cloudposse in a few hours. If you're ever interested in getting some extra support, leveraging any of our Cloud Posse open source ecosystem, whether it be Atmos, our Terraform modules, and so forth, we offer paid commercial support to unblock you and your teams and get you moving. Here are some ways you can get more involved in our open source community. We have our office hours, which you're listening to today. You can register for those live at cloudposse.com/officehours. You can find all of our past recordings at youtube.com/cloudposse if you want to get up to speed kind of on the things we talk about. We have our Slack community at cloudposse.com/Slack, where you can, it's free for everyone to join and register. It's a public community. Really aimed at helping people leveraging our open source, collaborate, get their pull requests reviewed and so forth. So if you are using our open source, this is a great place to congregate. And lastly, our newsletter at cloudposse.com/newsletter, where you can register and get a weekly newsletter. Currently on hiatus, but coming back soon. I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.